In 2010, I did an unpaid internship that made my career. I know there's a lot of hate online for unpaid internships, but I think there's a really good place for them. And throughout this video, as I tell my story, I'm going to break down to you where, why, and when I think unpaid internships can be very valuable. So first of all, why did I need it? Well, I was a psychology undergraduate student in a no-name college, and I realized I was good at math. I heard financial engineers made a ton of money and did pretty interesting work, so I wanted to become a financial engineer. Did a lot of research and landed on Baruch College, Master's in Financial Engineering. That is exactly what I wanted to do. Well, they required at least one internship in finance. Now, looking at my profile, all I've done work experience-wise is some music gigs, and I was a camp counselor. Like that was it. That was my entire experience, and some failed websites. But none of that really would help me get into a good internship, not to mention no-name undergrad and psychology degree. It just didn't add up. So I didn't even bother applying to regular finance jobs. Also in 2010, LinkedIn was still a thing, or had already started becoming a thing, and people were applying for jobs online. Monster.com was huge at the time, so nobody looked towards the old school methods of finding a job. So I decided to do that. I opened a local newspaper, and I found an advertisement, unpaid interns wanted. And then it said the word finance. I was like, yay, a finance internship. So I called up. I went down for an in-person interview. It was one interview. I met with two people. They liked me. They said, okay, you're hired on the spot. And I showed up a day later and started working. There was no paperwork. So a little bizarre, but that's the way it went. So what were the negatives about this internship? Well, it was unpaid, and it was for a no-name firm. That was it. And what were the pros of this unpaid internship? Well, because I wasn't getting paid, and because the fellow who actually ran the company lived in the Middle East and wasn't there actually controlling us, it was a bunch of unpaid interns and two very poorly paid full-time employees in our Long Island office, which gave us a lot of freedom to do whatever we want. So day one, I made it very clear I'm going to be working my own hours. Why? Well, I had a child. I had mortgage. Well, actually, I had rent to pay at the time. And quite frankly, I needed money, and it was unpaid. And I was still doing my undergraduate degree. So I was in school, had to pay rent, had to pay for a child. It just didn't make sense for me to work unpaid full time. So what I did is I worked from 9 a.m. till 1 p.m. At 1 p.m., I left, and I worked two teaching jobs. I was an elementary school teacher in one school and then in another school, and then I went to college. So I was kind of exerting myself a little bit back then. I was doing an unpaid internship, two teaching jobs, and then school. That's just the way it worked. And then Sunday I gave music lessons, so adding to the fun. But the fact that I can just manipulate the hours and make them whatever I wanted was pretty cool. Also, because it was unpaid and there was no real structure, I got to choose what I did. The work itself was kind of all over the place. The guy who ran the company had no idea what he was doing, really. When I joined, he was trying out this new insurance policy that he was all excited about called Keyman Insurance. But that gave me an opportunity to brush up on one skill I really wanted to improve on, which was sales. So what I did was I went online, I went to S&P, and I just found top companies. Actually, I just went to the stock market. I looked at all the top companies. I was looking for a certain market cap. I think the market cap I was looking for was between $500 million and $2 billion, if I remember correctly. And I would just try to get on the phone with the executives at that company and try to sell them this Keyman Insurance. And one of the other sales reps there gave me the script, and I started working with it. And eventually, I started becoming much more bold and just going at it myself without the script. But I remember, I got such joy. I actually got the CEO of Campbell Soup and Chiquita Bananas on the phone, which to me was mind-blowing that I was able to pull that off. So I got a lot of sales experience, which ultimately wasn't what I actually needed to develop my career, but for me, it's what I wanted at the time. So what did I get? I got to work my own hours. I got to do work that I wanted. I got to work locally. There was no such thing as remote work at the time, so I was working locally, which is amazing. It fit the bill of exactly what I needed, which was a finance internship to get into a master's program. and I gained sales experience. It was absolutely perfect for me. At the time, I remember my wife and my in-laws were almost upset at me. They're like, how are you working for no money? That doesn't make sense. And I said, oh, it does make sense. The company has no money, but I'm working to get into a master's program that will help me that will jumpstart my entire career. I saw it pretty clearly then. I don't know why nobody else understood it, but it made perfect sense to me. And my entire career fell into place because of this. Because I had that internship, I got into Baruch's master's program. Because I had a finance internship and I was in a financial engineering program, I was able to leverage that into my first real finance internship at Numerics. So it really helped me a ton. It was incredibly valuable, even though it was something that most people would really hate on online. Now, my point is this. Unpaid internships from profitable and wealthy firms is a disgrace. If the firm has money, they should be paying their employees. However, if there's a small firm or a startup that really doesn't have money, they're strapped for cash, and there is a student who needs to gain experience and is willing to work, I think part-time's ideal, but even full-time for no pay, you're not working for nothing. You're working for experience, and you're working to gain skills. It's an apprenticeship. You're gaining skills. You're able to add something to your resume. So I think there's a lot of value in it. And, people can hate me on this, but it actually made my career. I hope this helps you. If you have any questions about my internship, if you have any questions about whether you should take one, please put it in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you next time.